All right, we are now getting ready to talk Alabama football. And Ryan and I once talked football years ago. We were still doing audio for the Our Lads Football Network. That's how long it's been. We've switched over to video for the past year and a half or so. And I'm glad to have Ryan back. Ryan Fowler, who covers the Alabama Crimson Tide down in Tuscaloosa. And it's the game on, now what do you call it? Do you call it 100.9 or how do you, you've said it a million times. It's your station. So give me the slang.
It is the game. And
the game.
Just the name
Everybody
of the show.
knows you say the game at Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, the game, and it's the game with Ryan Fowler, but our station is Tide 100.9, and we have a great website, tide109.com, and have a lot of interaction. But we are, we've been around for quite a while. I was just thinking when you and I were talking about it with our lads, and let me also say this with Dan Shunka. I consider him a friend. It's a guy that I have featured for probably 20 years at least on my show in Tuscaloosa.
Awesome.
So I just want to continue to wish great things for Dan to come. And he was always a guy that would never say no when I'd say, come on in Tuscaloosa. And he'd start telling stories about different things. But we talk Alabama football year round, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. And we love every bit of it. I mean, It's our passion, it's our energy, and why not? It's one of the greatest dynasties in the history of not just college football, but in sports. It's pretty amazing to see what Coach Saban has been able to accomplish here. By the way, he's celebrating a big birthday today. 71 years of age. So happy birthday,
young.
Coach Saban.
Yes.
It is for him. I'll say this. If I could look like that at 71, I'd take it right now. Because he doesn't look 71.
No, he doesn't. No.
Yeah. And so
we remember when he was just starting out coaching, he was like, man, that's a young football coach. So he already had those looks way back when.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So at 71, we think maybe 5 more years is left in the tank, but we'll see. Could be more, could be less. Father time catches up with everyone.
Yes, it does. And so Alabama fans, I'm sure they're just going to enjoy it as long as they can. One loss on the season, but look, this is Alabama. So one loss is, unless it's the last game of the season, is not going to ruin Alabama's season. Just can't have two. So big game coming up on Saturday. All of a sudden, just like that, you knew LSU was going to be better this year with Kelly. But then you had the Tennessee, I don't know what that was. Just shows you how good Tennessee is really right now. But then LSU comes back, has a big win before the bye to say, nope, we're ready. We're ready for this Alabama game. And of course, you remember even just a couple of years ago when LSU wasn't a very good football team and it was like a 25-point spread, and that game went down to the last few seconds. So I don't think we're going to expect anything different on Saturday.
Well, let's kind of walk it back just a little bit. Alabama has not played great on the road, and that's really a pretty good sample size of about 2 years. There's the one exception. They played decent at Arkansas. They played decent at Mississippi State from 2021. But if you look at the road games, they've been kind of sloppy. They played Florida last year, could have got beat in that game, could have got beat.
Yeah, that was close.
They played Texas A&M. They did get beat last year in College Station. They just haven't played good on the road. And so now you got to go into a hostile environment. When you look at LSU, it's a fun atmosphere. It's a fun place for a media member to cover the game. And the only way that I can describe it is when you're in the press box, you have to pass notes to the guy that you're sitting beside. Wow. You literally have to pass notes because you can't hear yourself. I mean, you can look over and you look like you're talking, but no one can hear anything. So I have a lot of respect for Tiger Stadium and Baton Rouge. It's a hostile environment. And, I think Brian Kelly, this is coming from Tuscaloosa. I think Brian Kelly will win a national title in the next 4 to 5 years. I think he's that good of a football coach.
I won't disagree with you on that one. So as far as what you know so far, I know it's early in the week about this year's LSU football team. What do you think, and the road situation aside, what do you think LSU might cause the most issues with Alabama?
Well, you got to start with what we were just talking about, the road side of things, just the atmosphere. And if you're Alabama, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to walk in and take that crowd out of it, right?
Sure.
You want to give them a reason to sit down. Don't allow them to believe that they have any confidence, because that crowd can be a big factor in the game. So when you look at LSU, is make them not believe that there's a chance. But as long as that crowd hangs around and, let's say that you're up by 7 and you're going to halftime or you're in the third quarter, you have a chance to make that crowd believe that they have a chance to beat you.
Yep.
And that place, listen, it's deafening when you look at the energy and the atmosphere. So for LSU, go back to Vegas. They had this team at about 6.5 on the win total. That's where Vegas thought that the LSU Bengal Tigers would be. Well, they're sitting here at 6-2 right now. They've got Alabama, they've got Arkansas, and they've got UAB and Texas A&M. They could be able to win. I mean, I guess they could go 4-4, but chances are they'll probably go 3-4. They'll lose to Alabama, beat Arkansas, beat UAB, and then beat Texas A&M. So 3 additional wins, they would get to 9 wins. That's a big season in year number 1 with Brian Kelly.
Yep.
That's huge. So, and it's all been really, if you take a look at LSU, I think you've got to give credit to the quarterback, Jaden Daniels. And that's, to me, where they've been different in this year. I think he's given them more than maybe what they expect. And he's been very efficient with the quarterback, right? He's 12 touchdowns, only 1 interception. You can play with that, be conservative. You don't have to do too much, but it's that mobile threat of that quarterback where he can beat you with his legs. He can beat you with his arm. Very efficient quarterback with 9 rushing touchdowns. Let that sink in. 9 rushing touchdowns. That's something that Alabama's going to have to guard against.
What about and the fact that Alabama just went to Tennessee a couple of weeks ago? That's got to help them. Okay, the team did lose the game, but getting used to the crowd and all that. But what did you really think, and what do you think right now about this Tennessee team? They're taking on Georgia, the defending champs, monster game. I just have a feeling Tennessee is going to win that game. I just do. They're just so confident right now. Heupel's done a great job. They're gelling under the system. I'm not disrespecting Georgia. I just think there's something going on there at Tennessee that might be pretty special this season.
I think it's setting up to be a very special season. I mean, that's coming from Tuscaloosa. We're not allowed to brag on Tennessee, right? I mean, it's one of our big rivals. But if you take a look at this Tennessee team, Josh Heupel, what a job he's been able to do. Hendon Hooker, no doubt, gives you a lot of options, but I think it's the offensive scheme that they're able to throw, and they're able to get everybody confused. It's like exactly what these teams are going to do. You know what Tennessee's going to do, but you haven't been able to stop it. I think we saw that with Kentucky, right? I mean, 44-6. We thought, okay, well, this will be a game that, Will Levis is going to be back, and here comes Kentucky. Well, that's not the case. So the only thing is we want to see more of a sample size from Tennessee. You've played LSU on the road. They were able to win that pretty comfortably. You played Pitt on the road. But listen, going in this hostile environment, and keep in mind now, the Tennessee-LSU game, that was at 11 a.m. That was an early morning game in Tiger Stadium because we were like, 11 a.m.? Those guys are just going to stay throughout the evening. They're never going to go home. They're just going to roll right into Friday night and Saturday morning. So that will be, Sanford Stadium is going to be rocking. So those two teams, to me, now listen, Alabama has the potential to be among one of the best teams in the SEC. But in my opinion, Georgia and Tennessee, they have separated themselves right now as the 2 top teams in the league. Alabama, certainly, they could be a part of the conversation, but they got to play better. They got to play better. And they really a lot of mistakes, a lot of penalty yards. They're one of the worst penalized teams in the country. But Tennessee, I'm like you. I kind of like Tennessee in this game. What's the line?
8.5.
Looked at.
You can still get about 260 on the money line. And interesting, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to Mark Lawrence. We do a show, legendary handicapper, and we were going over the futures, and we said before the Tennessee-Alabama, this was before the Tennessee-Alabama game. So we said, look, If you like Tennessee, if you think Tennessee's for real and you think they're going to beat Alabama, then take a look at the futures, which were 100-1 to win the national championship at the time.
Wow.
And they went down now this week 8-1 to win the national championship.
Wow.
Just 3 weeks later. Even at 8-1, if you missed the boat, you missed the boat. But I even think same thing. If you like Tennessee to beat Georgia, if you didn't hear our show a few weeks ago, and you're going 8-1, yeah, I like them. I think they could beat Georgia. I'd go ahead and take that 8-1 to win the national championship because I think if they beat Georgia on Saturday, I think they are going to win the national championship.
I think, I told some family of mine, I've got some family that live up in right outside of Knoxville, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, Sevierville area. And I told them, I said, I think Tennessee is on a crash course to win a national title. There's something, you can always see something different. It's kind of like that LSU team.
The LSU sees, yeah. You could just tell, yeah.
And like I said, that's not going to get me any favoritism in Tuscaloosa. If they find this video, Greg, they're going to kill me. But
you mean you're not going to retweet it?
Looks like no, I will. But I'm just saying, it's Tennessee is going to be a challenge, and I've got a lot of Alabama people that call in my show who say we just want one more time, and yeah, it's hard to beat a team twice. Alabama saw that last year, beating Georgia the first time in the SEC title game, so it would be a challenge. But if Tennessee beats Georgia, I think the SEC championship game might become irrelevant for them, right? Win or lose, they're probably in. If they go to Georgia and they win that game, they're going to win Missouri. They're going to win South Carolina. They're going to win Vanderbilt. So they're going to be sitting there undefeated the SEC title game. They're going to be in regardless of that outcome. And then
good point.
You have to go back and play the scenario.
Good point.
Do you get them 3 times?
That would be crazy. Yeah. But that's a great point. Yeah. And
if you're a college football committee, do you put Alabama and Tennessee in the semifinal? I'm just painting the scenario. If Alabama happens to win and win out, do you put Alabama and Tennessee back in and you get it for a third time in a semifinal game, or do you make them go through the semifinal game to get to SoFi, California, and play one another? But you don't want an all-SEC final.
Yeah, I hear you.
That may push their narrative with expanding the playoffs. So,
but they might say, hey, the chances are it's going to, if we really believe it'll be Tennessee and Alabama, if they played opposite in the semis, then it might just be better for them to play in the semis so you don't get the championship game, if that's what they're thinking. Because I hear you. I mean, and we understand why, and I'm saying we, the outside SEC fans, why it happens, or like what had happened last year. They're just great football teams, and you're not going to discount that they shouldn't be in the championship game because how good they are. It just doesn't. It's almost like saying 2 AFC or 2 NFC teams playing in the Super Bowl. It's just a little bit. I'm not going to say unfair, but look, it is what it is, and you do want a little bit more variety. That's all. And but
and we're gonna get that, I think, with 12 teams, and if you really think about it, it really matches up. Initially, I was probably against expanding the playoffs because I have to ask the question, why? Why? Are we going to have a better champion because we have 12 teams?
I would feel the same way if I was Alabama.
Yeah, well, but I think really if you look at parity right now in the game of college football, it's more than we've ever had.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at the transfer portal, you look at NIL, we have a lot of teams. And I think the goal is to be more like the NFL, where everybody believes that they have a chance. Because think about right now, we're entering the month of November. Look at the teams that are still alive that they believe that they have a chance to compete for a college football playoff spot. I mean, there's a lot of teams that still believe that they have a chance. Yeah. So they want to continue that and increase that number. And, rightfully so. It's going to be more money for the TV executives and more money for the bureaucrats that run college football.
And it does give a lot of other fan bases an opportunity, even if it's a Cinderella opportunity, whatever it is. It may only happen one every 10 years, But when it does happen and an 8th seed or a 6th seed does go on to win the championship, it'll be a special type of season. You're a Heisman voter. So I have to ask this question too. We were just talking about futures. We were taking a look at the Heisman futures last week. And I'm not a big Heisman guy just because of the fact that I think it is very political at times. And I'd like to see more of, well, the little guy if it's possible, and not always just the quarterback on the top team. So when I saw that Max Duggan was 60-1 to win the Heisman, not about a betting thing, because he's not going to win it, and I doubt they're going to go undefeated and win a championship, which is really what it would take. You'd have to go undefeated by the time the voting came out for him to even have a chance. But that kind of bothers me. I mean, when I see like Drake May, who's having a fine season, and I see 4 or 5 other players that just are not having the season that Max Duggan is having, it's I don't know, kind of just irks me a little bit.
Well, I wish that we would vote after the season.
You mean when it's all over? Everything's over.
Yeah, when it's all over. And a chance to say, okay, we're done. Now let's do the Heisman Trophy. To me, it's like going to your microbiology class and you get your final grade at the midterm or maybe 3/4 of the way through the semester. To me, I wish that we would vote at the end. And I understand why it's a tradition, because we used to award championships prior to the bowl games. Yep. Well, now, if we're going to expand this thing, to me, as a Heisman voter, I would love to see us postseason, to be able to recognize that postseason. I understand that it's a made-for-TV event. When you look at that Saturday evening, it gives something. But to me, I'd love to see the best players against the best teams. And, we were just talking about Hendon Hooker a couple of minutes ago. Listen, I see how important Bryce Young is to Tuscaloosa, and it's a one-trick pony when you look at the offensive side of the football in Tuscaloosa. I mean, it is. Without him, I don't know where this team would be. So when you look at MVP, Bryce Young is definitely making the case there, but I think the stats are not going to be on his side. To me, it looks like if Tennessee continues right now, it's probably Hendon Hooker's
But don't
job,
you think?
Don't
you think though that they have to beat Georgia for that to happen? And yeah,
absolutely. He needs that. Well, and he got the Heisman moment against Alabama, but I think think about this. What if it's? I'm just setting up for the narrative. What if it's Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young going into the SEC title game? So you're not just playing for an SEC championship game. You're possibly playing for a Heisman.
You probably
trophy. Are. Yeah, because it's that last, and we all, championship Saturday, we all get that impression. And I think that's where college football would be if we had it postseason, that all these games would matter. But as a Heisman voter, you got to have your ballot submitted on that Monday at 4:00 Central Time. So you have to have your ballot, submitted. So it's just your last. You're seeing in those championship games, and which player rises up to the occasion. Yeah. And when you look at Hendon Hooker, it's hard not to make an argument.
He's got to be at the top. Man. Yeah. But got to win the game on Saturday.
He's got to win it. He's got to win it.
You're not going to vote a Tennessee quarterback the Heisman if he has a loss to the defending national champions. That could happen.
Well, and right now you got to look at Bryce Young. He's got one less game. Because he got knocked out against Arkansas. He missed a half there, and then he's got the one less game against Texas A&M the following week. So, stat-wise, he's got some catching up to do. And he's certainly capable as a quarterback, but, for him to get back in it, this Alabama team is going to have to hit another big switch.
Yeah.
And they're capable of doing that, but we've really seen no evidence of this team being that dominant Alabama team that we've come to expect.
Well, those wide receivers are in the NFL right now, and they're
showing out too.
Yes, and before I let you go, well, actually, before I run through the players, which is the last thing I want to talk about, I want to get your opinion on Bryan Harsin, who just today we were recording this on Monday night. And so, so early in the week, I can't believe it. So, Harsin was fired. We kind of all knew this was going to happen eventually. What did you think about the whole Bryan Harsin Auburn thing, and who do you think might be their next coach?
Well, let's go back to Bryan Harsin, the way that he was treated about 9 months ago, all these rumors that were getting out and being leaked out and somehow, getting it out to the media. We do a show that's based around Alabama fans. And as you know, Alabama fans don't like everything they do. But we had Alabama fans calling in that week or 2 weeks around Bryan Harsin saying that they kind of felt sorry for the way that he was being treated by Auburn. So
wow.
You've done something bad
when
you got opposing fans that are taking up for a head coach. I thought what Auburn did to him was embarrassing. I don't think it's going to help them. I think it's going to hurt them when they go out and try to recruit a coach, because this has kind of become a trend right now with Auburn. And they need to get a hire where they can say, okay, well, we're going to fix some things and we're going to correct it. And we're not going to be that trend of firing coaches too soon, not giving them enough time to build stability in the program. Auburn's got some proving to do, and they're going to have to prove to some of these coaching fraternities, because right now, I don't think that's a good job. Now, money solves a lot of issues, but the problem is everybody's paying big money. I mean, we saw Liberty just pay Hugh Freeze $5 million a year.
Yeah.
So everybody's paying big money. So you're no longer able to separate yourself with money. I think Auburn's going to have a hard time finding a top-tier coach. Now, they just hired an athletic director in John Cohen today from Mississippi State. We'll see if he's able to change the perception. But that program has the potential to be, like a top 15 job. I just don't think it is right now, based on the scenarios that they put their coaches through. It's probably an 18 to 22. There's a lot of other stops out there. I mean, let's take Lane Kiffin. His name is being thrown around quite a bit. If you're Lane Kiffin, can you do something at Auburn that you're not able to do at Ole Miss? And I think that answer is no. I mean, look at what he's been able to do. So if you look at Lane Kiffin, why would he leave Oxford, Mississippi to go to Auburn right now? So that's a scenario. And then you got Oklahoma and Texas coming in to the SEC. Yep. That job, and the only reason I brought that up is you slide down, because if you look at jobs ranked in the SEC, you're going to slide down 2 more spots because Texas and Oklahoma comes into the league. So if you're Auburn, what's your role in, what's your place?
I hear you.
So Auburn, I think, is going to have a hard time finding that quality top-tier coach. Now, I promise you, they're going to go down to their 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th option, and they're going to come out and they're going to tell you that he was the number one guy.
Yeah.
He was the first guy that we targeted, and nobody else. But we've seen that circus before. But we'll see. I mean, Cohen may be able to be a difference maker and being able to prove, because my understanding is he's a pretty stand-up guy. I've never had a chance to interview him, but the athletic director at Mississippi State, which, by the way, is who Auburn plays this week. So that's a little bit intriguing.
That's interesting. So
maybe he'll just travel back with the team or whatever. So.
Yeah, because, don't you think the main deal, like you said, it may not be go after, sort of like what Oregon did. Get a guy that doesn't have to have head coaching experience, but get a guy that can recruit. Get a guy like that. Obviously, you want to know they can coach a little bit. But maybe that is also, like you're saying, because does Matt Campbell, because he's got to be the biggest name, right? And as far as college potential candidates, and is that a job that he's interested in? Because that would be
that would be a good name. That's a good name and a good football coach. I mean, I think that's the type of options that's going to be out there for them. I think a Matt Campbell would be a good name. A Luke Fickell would be another good name at Cincinnati. But they're not going to convince one of these blue chip coaches that has a stable job.
Yes, agreed.
To actually come to Auburn at the current point. I just don't see it happening.
Do you think Matt Rule comes back to college? I think he should, as a head coach. And what kind of level do you think Matt Rule becomes if he gets a head coaching job in college now? Do you think he
Well,
gets a better, like, hey, I was an NFL coach. I might have been a Temple head coach in college, but I was in Baylor. Baylor's a nice step up, but I want something better than Baylor. I deserve something better than Baylor.
and you just brought up another name because I'm thinking about Matt Rule, and no doubt he would be a good guy. But how about a guy like Dave Aranda that you could go to Baylor? See, that would be a coach that you're definitely a better job than Baylor. No offense,
Yes.
but you're a better job.
Yes.
And now 12 is going to go through the transition. Dave Aranda knows a lot about the SEC. He
That's
coached
right.
at LSU. Great defensive mind. So that would be an option. But Matt Rule, to go back to answer your question, I think there's a lot of coaches that don't have success in the NFL that come to college.
Most of them
and
don't.
Have success.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it's tough.
Yeah.
I would just say, and you can get me back on if they land one of these top tier coaches. I don't think they do it. And
I agree.
That's not just coming from Tuscaloosa. I just think it's the trend of the way that they've treated coaches. If you want to go back to Tommy Tuberville and Bobby Petrino and all the different scandals trying to, they called it Jetgate here locally in the state.
Remember that.
It goes through all the different things. This has become about a 15-year trend around Auburn head coaches. The way that they fire coaches, hire coaches, it's not good. And if you're Auburn, how do you get over that perception right now? I think you've got to go hire a coach and treat him the right way before you get over this trend.
Agreed. All right, Ryan. So I want to use this last few minutes we have to go over the players, and we're going to talk a lot more about Alabama players when the season's over between now and the draft. But let's start on offense. And Bryce Young, a lot of people believe. First of all, is Bryce Young definitely coming out? What's your sense?
Well, I think it would be a no-brainer, and I think Nick Saban would probably force him unless there was just some reason. Because Nick Saban generally, if you're going to be a top pick like this, he pretty much advises you to come out. So I think it would take an absolute. I mean, it would be the shocking sports story of the year if Bryce
just
Young
making
decided.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I would think that it would be highly unlikely that he would come back for another season.
I know you've seen a lot more of Young than Stroud, but what's your feeling on who might be a better quarterback?
Well, I watched CJ against Penn State, and so when you cover a team, you cover the team, and you grow up or kind of watch the tendencies, and you're like, when I look at Bryce Young, Greg, I think he's the best player, in my opinion, that I've seen in college football. I have a hard time thinking of players that are better than him as a team. Look at his offensive line from last year. He won a Heisman Trophy running for his life. He threw for almost 5,000 yards, 49 touchdowns. And and you say, well, what's that a comparison? Well, allow me to go to the guy that's winning it right now with Hendon Hooker. And I think I was just looking. I think he's got 21 touchdowns right now. And I may be a little bit low on that. Yeah, Hendon Hooker's got 21 touchdowns. 21 touchdowns. So Bryce Young threw for 49 touchdowns last year. 49. And we're more than halfway home when you look at the season. We've only got 4 games left in the regular season. So when you look at Bryce Young, he does, and I know they're going to question his size. It's just going to be something.
Yes.
The NFL. But when you look at everything that he does, he makes things happen when there's really nothing there. He never gives up on a play.
Yes.
His eyes never – if you watch, I don't care how much pressure. He was sacked last year a ton. His offensive line really – they've done much better this year, but still not – I'd say probably a C+, B-. He does more with less. He doesn't have the wide receivers that C.J. Stroud has. He had – Jamison Williams last year. He had John Mechie, was a quality wide receiver. But when you look at wide receivers, they're young, and he's having to make a lot. And he's also having to do it without a rushing attack. The last game that they played, they had 29 yards rushing. And so he's having to do a lot of it knowing that they know that he's going to throw the football.
Yeah.
So he's having to put it in some pretty tight windows. Bryce Young handles himself with the utmost class, the way that, just from a media perspective, I appreciate when guys are respectful. I'm not saying that makes them a better player, but I think you can tell who they are as individuals when, it's yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, no, sir. It's highly respectable.
Yes.
Tell you what, he's been a lot of fun to follow.
I can imagine.
He's solid class. Every time you get a chance to visit with him in the media room, you walk away more impressed. And if I was drafting a quarterback that I want my franchise to be built off on, I wouldn't doubt for 1 second that Bryce Young would be able to do that.
Yeah, he's the guy that I'm actually leaning towards at this point myself. Again, I think the height issue is the only thing. As long as that's not a problem for and who knows, because we don't really do. What do you think his actual height might be? Realistically,
he's under 6 feet.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean,
but he's not that small. He's tall enough.
5'11".
That's
5'10".
tall enough.
Yeah,
you don't want to get lower than that.
I mean, he's taller than I am, and I'm 5'9".
Okay.
So he's got me by, a little bit, because I stand up beside him at the like the media days and different things. And but he does a lot with just the way that he keeps his eyes down the field. But hey, it's the NFL. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But just basing on what we've seen for him, the tight windows. I mean, he throws it in places that you're not really supposed to do it as a college guy. And he's doing so much at the line of scrimmage too.
Oh, that's important.
He's setting his block.
Yes.
Yeah, he's setting his blocking assignments. He's moving, sliding protection, and
that's important.
You don't see that from a college quarterback, but they're trusting him with a lot of things out on that field.
He does remind me, and you know what? I'm sure it's probably been said already. I'm sure it'll be said before the draft, but he's like, and I hear it all the time. I heard it with Zach. I'm a Jet fan, and I heard it. Oh, Zach, he's got that Patrick Mahomes kind of way about whatever. And I hear it just too much, but Bryce is actually the one kid that I believe that is true. Just like you said, he makes plays happen that you go, wow, where did that come from? And the only other quarterback that I know that makes those types of plays is Mahomes in the NFL.
That's a good comparison. And I know that we always do undersized quarterbacks. We automatically, take the Drew Brees.
Drew Brees, yes.
To Drew Brees. But the way that he commands the offense, he is simply amazing. But, for the Alabama legacy, he needs this national title because he doesn't have one as a starting quarterback. Yeah. And unfortunately,
that's right.
The way that, he could walk out of here, being one of the top players of all time, but he's got to win a national title as a starting quarterback. And I'm not trying to be unfair, but it's the way that you base players. It's the way that you say, oh, it's the greatest Alabama player of all time, but he didn't win a national title.
Especially during Nick Saban's era. Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't work in Tuscaloosa.
Okay. Skill position players. Gibbs. He's the top one as far as pro prospects right now.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, because I'm going through. There's really nothing. I mean, there's some other guys that that could be a playmaker, but I don't see anybody that would beat Gibbs by no means. Obviously, there's some on the other side of the field that are going to be highly rated. But on the offense, he's doing it with very little.
Yeah.
He's making something happen with not a lot of, talent. There's talent over there, but there's not first-round NFL
not like
talent
last year.
Other than Gibbs would probably be. Yeah, no, not even close.
No. Okay. By the way, Prentice, is he the top true freshman for Alabama?
He would be. Yeah, I think it would be. Isaiah Bond's another guy that you want to keep an eye on just for future. I think I really like, what he's been able to show you.
Okay.
There's another guy that's been a little injured, but he hasn't really played a lot. Is Aaron Anderson. Keep your eye on him. He's going to be a super wide receiver here. They're going to have strength at wide receiver. It's just it's right now at this point. All young. It's very, very young, and they're having a lot of drops. But see, that's the one thing. If you'll watch Bryce, he doesn't get rattled when these wide receivers drop these. Even going back to Jahmyr Gibbs, he dropped a pass that would have kept a drive going against Tennessee that would have made a field goal a lot closer. It was a drop, and you don't see that frustration from Bryce. So I hate to circle right back to
That's
Bryce,
okay.
but Kobe Prentice would be the guy that would be there. You also keep an eye on, is an older player, but Ja'Cory Brooks, I think, also has a chance to develop into an NFL caliber wide receiver.
Okay.
Probably not there yet, but he's got the physicality. Big guy, big target, and just needs a little bit more time in the system.
So he could be the number one receiver next year, for sure.
He could be, and I think he could be in this last part of the half too. The last 4 games, I think he could be a guy that Alabama wants to really take that next step. So keep your eye on Ja'Cory Brooks.
Okay.
At times, he's shown flashes of really stepping out there, but has yet to do it.
Yeah, inconsistency, but that's it. We need to get young players, and it is what it is. Defensively, this is where there's a lot of talent. Now, Will Anderson, before the season began, a lot of talk about, okay, if a team has the first pick of the draft and they don't need a quarterback, it's going to be Will Anderson. If they need a quarterback, it's going to be a hell of a debate. You go Will Anderson or you go with the quarterback, even though most teams, of course, will go to the quarterback no matter what. Will Anderson's stats are down considerably this season. So you're watching him play. All I can say is, I'm sure he's been double teamed, triple teamed. They're trying to do whatever they can to make sure that he's not making a play. And I'm not saying maybe his pressures aren't down and things of that nature, but his tackles for loss and stats, two big stats that a lot of people keep an eye on. There's a lot of underlying metrics that I'm sure, especially somebody that watches him as much as you do, can kind of update me and go, yeah, the sacks might be down, the tackles for loss might be down, but he's still the same player he was last year, if not better. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think Will's having a good season. I don't think he's having the season that you thought he would be from last year.
Okay.
18.5 sacks and all the tackles for a loss. They're obviously he's getting a lot of attention this year. He's getting, double teamed.
Yeah.
Even they're having to slide him all different types of ways to even create some of that headache. I still think there's more in his game that he could tap into. I still think there's some additional things that Will Anderson could add. But I thought he would have, really, to be honest with you, and this is not a Will Anderson, I thought the secondary would be better, and I thought his numbers would be better based on the secondary. Well, that secondary has really been somewhat of a weakness on this team. It got him beat against Tennessee, and those positions worked hand in hand. So in some ways you could put it on Will Anderson, but in other ways you have to put it on that secondary because it's such, interlocking with when you look at secondary and edge rushers. So Will Anderson, listen, I hate to say this like I did Bryce Young, but another quality individual and a guy that's going to do everything you want to do in that locker room.
That's important.
And so building a team around him, and I think he'll have a lot of success in the NFL. Like I said, the stats are down, but I think some of that you could put that responsibility on the defensive backs.
Okay. By the way, as far as the defensive backs, so Helms, McKinstry, Battle, those are like the 3 big names. And there's a few others, but are any of those kids overrated? Because like you say, secondary's not playing all that well, so somebody's got to not be performing.
Well, and I think that's just schematic-wise, it's been lacking. But you go to a guy like Jordan Battle, who's a leader back there. DeMarco Helms has had a great season. Brian Branch has had a great season. But it seems like they give up these big plays at moments, and it's like, you could play good for 40 plays, but then you give up 4, and it looks disastrous. So Malachi Moore has a guy that kind of rebounded, had a sophomore slump last year. He's not there yet, but he could be a guy that you can keep an eye on. But everybody's going to want to know about Eli Ricks. Eli Ricks is an All-American coming in from LSU. He got his first start against Mississippi State. He defended 10 passes and only 1 completion. had
Okay.
5 pass breakups. Watch Eli Ricks. That could be a guy that could really be important. If Alabama's going to make a run, Eli Ricks will be a part of that. And then next year when Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be eligible for the draft, you're going to be watching Kool-Aid McKinstry because he's an outstanding football player. But he's still got one more year in the system, guaranteed.
Was Ricks in the Tennessee game?
No.
Okay.
No.
So right there you go.
If he did, he did not play a significant role. And they've been going with a younger player by the name of Terrion Arnold, which has played some good football, but he's still growing. There's growing pains with those young defensive backs. But, you've got a lot of veteran leadership back there. Jordan Battle, Brian Branch, and DeMarco Helms. You should be better
you should.
in that group.
Who's got the highest ceiling?
Well, Jordan Battle, corners are so. I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, they make all the money, but you got to have a good safety.
Unless you're really special at safety, you have to be really special.
I would say DeMarco. That's really who's got the highest ceiling. I mean, coming from I'd probably have to say Jordan Battle, but Brian Branch is another guy that you want to keep an eye on. Brian Branch is a guy that's played, in the nickel for Alabama, that could play corner if you were desperate, but he could also play, back in both areas of the field.
Okay.
Brian Branch would be a guy that I would keep my eye on. But I like Jordan Battle too. But Jordan has had a little bit of an injury.
Okay.
And I go back to the Vanderbilt game. I think he had a hamstring injury. Looks like, just judging by his play, he doesn't seem to be 100%. You know how those things can linger around a little bit.
Sure.
I think that's where we're at with him.
And then finally, just some of the other players up front: Dallas Turner, Byron Young, DJ Dale, kids like that. Who should we really be zeroing in on that could have, the better pro career? And maybe somebody who I haven't mentioned. And I didn't mention To'o.
Yeah. Henry To'oTo'o has had a productive season. You mentioned Dallas Turner there, and that's no doubt one of the great players on this defensive side of the football. But I would probably, if you just if you said who's got the biggest ceiling on that other team, the guys that you mentioned, I'd probably get Jaheim Otis. Jaheim is a freshman. Keep your eye on him. He's a playmaker, and he is a big, physical. He may be your next big defensive line prospect at Alabama. Just keep your eye on Jaheim Otis.
He's redshirt freshman?
He's true freshman.
True freshman. Wow.
He lost about 70 pounds. Coming in, he was over 400.
I like it.
And then he's down to like 345. But he's been a difference maker. But they got to get healthy on that defensive front. If not, that's going to be a really big problem for Alabama going forward in this final couple of weeks. Got to get healthy on the defensive line.
So he's a nose tackle.
He does, but I mean, in that 3-4, they'll slide him out and truly be a tackle there.
And is that where he wants to play? You think, or do you think he needs to?
Don't know. We don't talk to true freshmen, so they don't bring them into the media availability, so we don't ever get that chance.
Ryan, I appreciate it. A little extra time, and I know, of course, you have your show that's on Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 Central, correct? And so we were getting the opportunity to talk to you between your show and going home. So I really appreciate you spending a little extra time with us before you go home. I'm sure the missus is not going to appreciate that. Give her my best, hopefully.
Well, I just hope she saves some Reese's Cups for me. I mean, that's what I'm hoping.
That's dinner?
Hoping, well, it's trick-or-treat night, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
See? Yeah, I don't have kids. You do, so you would know.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not talking about – I'm
Your
talking
kids.
about from handing out.
Handing out the trick.
Yeah,
yes, okay.
Put the Three Musketeers in the bag. Put the candy that I don't want. Save the Reese's Cups. Save the Reese's Cups.
I hear you. Ryan, I appreciate it. I hope we get an opportunity to talk again, like I said, either before the season ends, especially if there's a playoff run, which is entirely possible because this is Alabama. or around bowl time. So I look forward to talking to you many more times. I'm glad we were able to set this up for the first time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the chat. Thank you.